An unclassified document titled Biological Radio Communication, authored by B. Kaczynski, was translated for the Air Force Systems Command Foreign Technology Division out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1963. It explores the Soviet Union's early research into telepathic communication. The translation was prepared by the Translation Division out of Wright-Patterson and is dated March 1st of 1963. By the looks of this, it was sourced from a Russian newspaper called Rabochaya Gazeta and dates originally from May of '62. The author, B. Kaczynski, shown here in this picture, presents a wealth of intriguing data, statements from scientists, and his own observations to make the bold claim that not only is telepathy a very real phenomenon, but that each living organism is essentially a microscopic radio station. Here in this image, we see him in one of his many experiments using dogs. If we are in fact biological radio stations with innate ability to receive and transmit telepathically, the implications of this are truly mind-blowing even today and would change our understanding of the natural world forever. This document will leave you questioning your own capabilities and the nature of reality itself. So let's get into it here and read through some of these accounts. It begins with the question: can living organisms transmit signals to a distance? If so, then by what means? Can it be that in nature there exists biological radio communication, and that each living organism is a microscopic radio station? We are beginning the publication of articles written especially for the Rabochaya Gazeta, this paper, by candidate physico-math sciences B.B. Kaczynski, devoted to some strange phenomena in the life and behavior of man and animals. It will be about silent communication between people, and in general, in the animal world, about the transmission of invisible thought information, about the unseen directing by man of living beings. In the year 1889, in a scientific report by the great A.S. Popov, who first discovered radio communication, the question was proposed as to whether there exists in man such a sense organ as could perceive electromagnetic waves in the ether. Alexander Stepanovich Popov, according to Wikipedia, was a Russian physicist credited with being one of the first to invent radio receiving devices. He's pictured here. And lo, in June of 1922, I succeeded in discovering under the microscope details of the nerves of a frog which have affinity with the windings of a solenoid. I saw with my own eyes also something that could be compared with the facings of a condenser, plate-like expansions on some ends of the branchings of the nerve, little metal plates. This warranted my considering these little metal plates as facings of a condenser, which are included in series with the windings of a solenoid in series in an oscillating circuit. A radio amateur will understand what a shaking enthusiasm I experienced at the moment when I, for the first time, saw this very organ of electromagnetic waves about which A.S. Popov was asking. K.E. Tsiolkovsky, knowing that I was carrying on these researches, sent me as far back as February of 1922 from Kaluga, in which he wrote, simultaneously with chemical action, which is propagated very slowly in the nerves, in the act of thinking, electromagnetic waves are excited which are propagated with the speed of light. These act on identically constructed nervous systems of people near to us and produce the known telepathic phenomena. Later in the conversation, with me at his house in Kaluga, on learning about the fact that the researches of Ukrainian academician A.V. Leontovich, published in 1928, confirmed the position of my theory as to the presence of elements of an oscillating circuit in the nervous system, that is to say, of the electromagnetic nature of the phenomena of the transmission of information in the mind. Tsiolkovsky is pictured here. He was a Russian rocket scientist responsible for advancing the Soviet space program. Invisible Command. In the autumn of 1922, I began to work in the Moscow Zoopsychological Laboratory of V.L. Durov. One thing interested me. What is the physical essence of the transmission of a mental command from a man to an animal. In the conduct of the experiments and tests, together with V.L. Durov, active part was taken by the neuropathologist, academician V.M. Bekhterev, academician A.V. Leontovich, and others. So this is obviously an experiment that was done by multiple people here that were involved. Here's a picture of Durov on the right, on the left, and Bekhterev on the right. The paper goes on detailing a couple of telepathic experiments that they conducted on dogs, which were successful according to this. But then here we read this, and this is interesting. I designed a screening device which enabled one to insulate, in the electromagnetic sense, the experimenter from the animal experimented on. This device had the form of a cage with metallic network walls, i.e., there was used the effect of Faraday's screening cage known from physics. So it looks like they basically created some sort of a Faraday cage here. The first experiments showed the correctness of our assumptions. When the door of the cage was closed, V.L. Durov was not able to give any command to the dog Mars, which was outside. This circumstance served for me as proof that the nature of the phenomena involved in the transmission of mental information in making suggestions at a distance is just the same, electromagnetic, as an ordinary radio communication. From the year 1926 on, in our screening chamber, experiments have been conducted of mental suggestion to persons. With the door shut, he was never able to transmit a command to a person who was in the chamber, whereas with the open door, he unfailingly each time was successful. This irrefutably proved the electromagnetic nature of the phenomenon under investigation. Just as interesting were the experiments conducted by V.A. Poderny in 1923 in the Institute of Brain Research in Leningrad under the direction of V.M. Bekhterev. They confirmed the fact of transmission over a distance from brain to brain of mental information about emotional sensation and visible forms as well as motor impulses. This is pretty interesting. Beginning in 1957 abroad, particularly in the United States of America, the investigation of the problem of transmission of mental information has been going on to considerable extent. But as it turns out, mainly because the results can have great military significance. At the Friendship Airport in the state of Maryland, there was set up a long experiment in the exchange of mental information, transmission of visual images from the inductor, the student Smith, who was in the laboratory, to another indicator in our nomenclature, Lieutenant Jones, aboard the navigating atomic submarine Nautilus, which was submerged in the ocean at a distance of 2,000 kilometers from the base. Here's a picture of the actual submarine that they used, the USS Nautilus. This picture dates back from 1965. So the paper describes the experiment aboard the submarine, the Nautilus, at length, and you can read it in the document that I've linked below. But the conclusions were as follows. Afterwards, when Colonel Bowers confronted the contents, there was discovered a similarity of the images in more than 70% of the cases, whereas by the theory of probability, 20% would be sufficient so as not consider these coincidences mere chance. With the aid of a fine electrical measuring apparatus, having determined the length of the wave, amplitude, and other parameters which correspond to the concrete mental information transmitted by one and received by another person, and producing in this other one a sensation, feeling, or thought, we shall be able to design an instrument which will artificially reproduce these parameters. This part here is particularly important because it shows where they were heading with this stuff, and we can all use our imagination to see how this could be weaponized. The last thing I want to bring to your attention here in this document is the distribution list on the last page. And as we can see here, we have CIA, NSA, DIA, the Army, the Navy, NASA, and many other letter agencies. So that should say enough as to the seriousness with which they took this, and this brings us to the end of this presentation. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below, and we'll see you in the next video.